Hey guys, Steve here. Today we got the newest edition of Pick a Premium. This time, you guys voted for Mutsu, Tier 5 Japanese Battleship. I got Takagi in the screen there. That's a build I just run on the Japanese battleships in general. If I was going to tailor a tweak to this ship in particular, I might swap Jojo in for Kedrov. I want to be playing the ship at range as much as possible. Turret traverse becomes less and less valuable the further out you're planning on playing the ship. This is kind of one of those battleships where you really want to be the back of the pack, which is a difficult concept for a lot of players just because it's very easy to be too far back. But we'll try and talk about that more. I do want to mention how Pick a Premium works before we get too far into it. You guys go into the comments section of this video, pick one premium ship. I do have to have it. Now luckily I have most premiums except for, I think, Gascon and some of the goofball tier 2s and whatever the campaign ship, I forgot already, whatever that ship is. Those are your options. Pick one ship, put it in the comments. I'll tally up the votes here in a couple days. We'll pick that ship, and then next time, whatever ship has the most votes, we'll go ahead and cover that ship. Right off the bat here, we're going to see a booming shot against this York. And this Mutsu, extremely effective against cruisers, as you see there. We're going to talk about why that is exactly. Basically, the Mutsu is a Tier 5 version of the Nagato, but what that means in the game's lore or in the developer's mind, the effect they're trying to create with the ship is to have like an early version of the ship. So the hull, an early version of the hull, like an unupgraded version if we were going to be talking about the tech tree with the mods and stuff. And then the shells, when we're talking about how to shoot the guns on this thing, they're good booming shells, 410 caliber guns, so we can overmatch a lot of armor, especially that we're going to be seeing at this tier. You know, we're going to be able to punch through armor schemes regardless of enemies angling in a lot of instances. But because we have these early World War I versions of these shells, the penetration much lower than you would normally see. So that's why I think if you were going to play the ship in ranked or something and you wanted to spec a build just for this, I think Jojo's always an interesting option for the Japanese battleships. I think it's probably the line where he's the most helpful, at least of the battleship lines that we have right now. But I think in this ship and the Ashitaka, kind of the same idea, Tier 6, except for it's a Tier 6 Amagi instead of this being a Tier 5 Nagato. Both of them have the same idea where they're the big booming shots, but the penetration is not as big as the tech treat version that's one tier higher. So you got to keep that in mind. If you saw my shots against that Normandy earlier, I'm not aiming waterline at these battleships in most cases. We're just going to be aiming kind of like right in the middle of those battleships. Pull the trigger. We want to get maximum shells hitting the ship, but we're not dealing with both the really thick belt armor and then behind that the citadel armor. That's when you're going to have trouble with the penetration of this ship. So in my mind, I just kind of aim up a little bit, you know, roughly halfway on these battleship targets. And then you're going to be getting these nice juicy shots, a lot of shells hitting the ships. They're not going to have trouble penetrating the armor schemes when you're aiming up a little bit. And then you're not going to be getting citadel damage, so you're not going to be getting max damage per shell hit. But you can see here, when we're getting those booming shots coming in, you know, the damage is quite nice. In terms of AP damage, it's the highest at the tier, or it's tied with the West Virginia now at 13,640 on my build. So extremely dangerous. If you're getting hit by the Mutsu repeatedly, you're not going to last very long. But battleships, you're going to have a hard time citadeling those targets. Cruisers, on the other hand, I think the penetration or lack thereof kind of almost works the other direction. I feel like it's almost more likely to hit the citadel on those, almost like a shorter fuse shell. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's all in my mind. But anyway, basically when I'm playing the ship, if I got a broadside cruiser, I'll aim waterline for that ship like we did with the York earlier. Broadside battleships, we're still going to be shooting those. They're still juicy targets, but we're going to be aiming up. You can see that ship right there. He's coming in, so it might have looked like we aimed kind of lower on the ship, but because he's coming towards us, the idea is those shells should be hitting him right in the middle of the ship as the shells actually meet the target. Armor scheme wise, like I said, it's an early version of the Nagato, so it presumably has less armor than that. Nagato's not exactly notorious for being the most durable battleship. In fact, it's one of the juicier battleships you're going to run into. Mutsu, same idea. If you get a broadside Mutsu, go ahead and blast away at it. I think the Citadel seems like it's pretty big and pretty easy to hit, and you can shred it. So when I'm playing the Mutsu, I'm not normally this far forward. I want to be kind of back of the pack, which is a difficult playstyle for me to advocate because that's what most players are already doing anyways, to their detriment and the team's detriment. But this ship, when you're getting focused, i.e. when you're in the front like this and everyone on the enemy team shooting at you, you're going to have a hard time surviving. The deck armor prior to the IFHE rework on the American light cruisers and the Russian light cruisers was already suspect. We were already taking a lot of damage, prior to those type of cruisers being in the game. Now that they're in the game, those type of cruisers can absolutely shred you. You're going to get fires galore, and you're going to get a lot of raw damage. So if you're a cruiser player and you see a Mutsu, feel free to focus that ship with your HE. You're going to get, like I said, the raw damage plus the fire damage. It's not going to last very long. Even though we got a great hit point pool of 58,400 on mine, which I believe looks like third at the tier. So I mean, durable in terms of the HP, but the armor schemes, that HP is going to be dwindling rapidly. So even when you're angling, it's difficult to protect yourself. So how we're protecting ourselves with the ship, working on our positioning, make sure we're not being focused. In my opinion, the most difficult part of the Mutsu for players that I see out there in the wild playing it is they say, okay, we got torpedoes on this thing. We got a German version of the Torpedo. Let's get up there. Let's get our hands dirty. We'll get up close and start smacking people around in a brawling type of game and try and get some torpedoes on there. The torpedoes on this ship are primarily used for aiming information, or I want to say aim assist, but I want you guys to get confused with the zoom in thing I'm talking about. When you switch to torpedo views, you'll see me doing this constantly when I'm playing the game. Anything I got a torpedo on, I'll switch to the torpedo view. You can kind of get a good idea of how fast that ship is. Now, I don't believe I demonstrate in this game, probably just because I usually forget that I have torpedoes in this, because we're not trying to use the torpedoes. If you're getting rushed, occasionally they'll come into play. I mean, most players aren't going to expect torpedoes coming off of a Japanese battleship, so the surprise factor potentially is there against players that don't really know what they're facing. But if I did demonstrate the firing angles, you'd have about a 30-degree spread window directly to the right or the left of the ship. So it's to get the torpedoes on target, you got to be perfectly broadside. You get 2 single launches per side. They reload very quickly. So I mean, if you do happen to find yourself in situations where you have these close range targets, get the torpedoes in the water. They're always a distraction factor. You never know, you might hit someone with them, and then that causes problems for them. But do not be loading into the game thinking, how can I get into positions where I'm going to torpedo with this ship? Because, again, my advice to you, don't park yourself on the moon. Stay relevant. Be shooting on reload throughout the game, but don't be too close. Don't be front and center. You certainly don't want to be in brawling distance with these ships, because it's usually not going to work out for you. Now this game here, we didn't get a lot of chance to talk about it. It's kind of a quick hitter, booming damage. I wanted to show this one just because it can demonstrate how much damage you can get in a short window with the ship. And hopefully if you look at it carefully, you can see kind of the aim points on these ships. Again, right there we aimed about halfway up the ship, and that's where we're kind of aiming on these battleships. But my position here, I'm much further far forward than I would typically want to be. The reason I ended up doing that in this game is I kind of moved too far forward initially, and then I would never felt safe making a turn because we had battleships looking to punish us. So we were kind of locked in, facing the targets, and we just kind of moved as we were able to do throughout the match. Anyway, that's a look at the Mutsu for you guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Be sure to leave your votes for the next edition of Pick It Premium in the comments, and we'll see y'all later. Peace!